Hello, this is James Hudnall, and this is another episode of Creative Secrets, number 22. And now we're into the characterization phase of our story. Characterization is one of the pillars of storytelling. Without it, you won't have a story. Characterization is a very important aspect. I can tell you right now that if you don't have good characterization, your story will not be remembered very well because it's a fundamental component of storytelling. Therefore, I call it a pillar of storytelling. It holds up the whole edifice. Without it, you don't have anything. I'll explain to that in a series of videos. This is the first of the videos because it'll take time to break down different aspects of characters. I will go over things like heroes and villains and supporting characters and how you get three-dimensional characters, etc. But today I want to just cover the basic overview of the whole thing so you can get a sense of where this is going and why it's important. To start with, a character in a story is obviously not a real person, even if you base it on a real person. A character is, however, in some respects superior to a real person in the sense that you can know them better than you can know a real person, because a real person has elements to themselves that you don't even know about, and they can surprise you in both good and bad ways. Whereas a character in a story is consistent depending on how the writer writes them. But here's the thing, you have to imbue every character with humanity, and you have to look at them as people, not as characters. The reason I say that is because a lot of writers don't take their characters seriously enough and instead see them as a tool. They see them as the means to an end. They see them in an artificial way. Here's the thing, if you don't believe in the characters, then neither will the audience. The audience has to believe that they're real, even if they know they're not real. You have to produce a feeling in the audience that they are getting a sense of a real person. And that is what separates good stories from bad stories, is how believable the characters are. So one of the first things you need to understand is how to make a character likable versus unlikable. It's actually a simple formula, however, it takes time and practice and study. It's good to study other people and determine why is somebody likable and another person is not. This is an age-old question, especially if you're a teenager. It's something you probably pondered a lot. And some people are good at it and some people aren't. A lot of people become popular because of charisma. But charisma in itself isn't what makes a character likable. It just makes a character more personable. Personal makes a character more likable if they're good at it. But there are a lot of personable people who are scumbags, who are evil. So personable is not necessarily the answer to everything. You innately want your character, if they're a protagonist or hero, to be likable in some way, even if they do unlikable things. They have to be justified. So that brings us to what makes a character more likable or dislikable. It's the choices the character makes. There's an old saying that a character is action. That used to drive me nuts when I read that in a book when I was starting out. The character is action. Like, what the hell does that mean? What it means is that whatever a character's decisions are defines that character. Whatever a character chooses to do defines what kind of person they are. To give you an example, let's say you're in a room with a bunch of people and suddenly some madman comes in and starts shooting people or acting crazy and waving a gun around. Now, different people will react to that situation in different ways, and that will define their character, because under pressure, this is what reveals the true nature of some people. Whether they're brave or cowards, whether they're in control or not in control, whether they can handle things or not. So whenever you put a character in a situation, you're testing what kind of person they are, and you're showing the audience what kind of person they are. You are giving us an example of whether we should be approving of their behavior or not. If we approve of their behavior, then that creates a bond. And if they don't approve, then that will lessen their acceptance of that person. And the less they accept somebody, the less they want to follow the story if it's about them. So you have to know how to work this to your advantage, because a lot of times you might want to start off with a character who does things wrong, so you have to balance it with some things that they do right so that we don't lose the reader, so we can see that, you know, they might be a coward but their heart's in the right place or something like that. And then as the story develops, you see their character growth, which we'll get into. But the character arc is another thing we'll be talking about. But anyways, you have to work on the likability thing first, right off the bat. If you can make the audience like the character right off the bat, then they will care about what happens next. And when they care about what happens next, then you've got them, and you can take it from there, and you can build on that. But like I said, one of the first things you have to do in a story, besides grab their attention, is give them a character that you care about, that you're interested in, that you want to know what happens to them, because you're creating what is known as the audience bond, where the audience is bonding with the character. Just like, and you may not like this analogy, but it is apt to some degree, a pet will bond with the owner for the first time. And it actually is a two-way street. People can bond with a pet, and a pet can bond with them. And it's like a psychic thing almost, and you can do that in a story. It's very powerful if you can do it right. So this is something you need to know as a writer. Again, characterization is a fundamental pillar of storytelling. Another way to decide how likable a person is how do they act to how do they treat other people. If they're obnoxious, if they're rude, if they're disrespectful to other people, then that will make them less likely to be appealing, unless, of course, it's funny and they're being that way to people that are even worse than themselves. But again, you have to dial it back and show how they treat other people who are normal, and see if they're nice to other people or if they're being jerks, because ultimately that is going to affect how other people will view them. Just like in reality, if you see people acting in a way that you don't like, you dislike them automatically. You have to obviously not do that with the character that you want people to like, unless you're going to twist it in some way. But we'll get into that in another episode. Right now I just want to get to the basics. So again, how do they treat other people in their life, for example? How do they treat their mother or their father or their brother and sister or children? Again, that is going to be a major clue to the audience, what kind of person they are. So you have to consider that. And I'll get into interpersonal relationships, characterization, when I talk about three-dimensional characterization. But I wanted you to think about this whenever you create a character, whether they're good or bad, whether they're important or not, whether they're just a walk-on character. How they treat other people is going to be the first time that people see them, and they'll make their judgment call on that person in that particular moment. And if you show them in a negative way and you want them to be liked later, then you're going to have to work extra hard to win people over, and you don't want to alienate them or turn them off too much, or people will just stop watching the movie or shut the book or whatever. So you have to think about these things and handle them appropriately, because it's very important. Characterization is a fundamental thing. So that's it for this episode. Please check the links below, and I will see you next time shortly, as we'll get into more about characterization. I think for the next episode we'll talk about heroes and then villains. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this, and please subscribe, please tell your friends, please like the video. I could use likes on my video. All of this helps my channel, so I appreciate everything you did in watching this, and I will talk to you later. Bye.